In 1957, people finally got a way to drive directly between Michigan's lower and upper peninsulas. The mighty Mac, the Mackinac Bridge, one of the longest suspension bridges on the planet. And almost 70 years later, this thing is still open. In fact, many pieces of the Mackinac Bridge are original, dating back to the 1950s. So, how much longer does this thing have left? It's story time. Recently, I made a video about the history and the engineering of the Mackinac Bridge. And as part of that trip, I got to spend a couple of mornings with the assistant engineer, the maintenance supervisor, and the safety boat captain. They helped me understand how this bridge has lasted so long and what they're planning for the future. So for this video, I'm taking you along with me for those conversations. And you'll see that I got to learn some cool stuff I did not expect about the Mackinac Bridge. Like how it's designed to move. Like, a lot.
Probably the most interesting fact would be, well, we're standing pretty close here to center span right now, and at center span, the bridge is designed to move 33 feet in either direction. So the bridge does not sway back and forth, as most people believe, but with a steady wind, which we experience pretty substantial winds here in the Straits of Mackinac, but with a sustained wind, the bridge would push to one side or the other side, 33 feet in either direction. So, but the bridge does move.
Cool, so nothing to be concerned about.
Nothing to be concerned about.
Okay,
No.
amazing.
But that's not the only motion. When a heavy truck drives onto the suspended section of the bridge, the whole thing shifts and winds just a little bit. You can see this happen at the finger joints, which are named because they look like fingers. And this motion is a big deal. If the bridge were too stiff and unyielding, it wouldn't have lasted for almost 7 decades.
These finger joints were replaced when I started here back in, I think, 96, 97, they did one tower, and then 97, 98, they did the other tower. So this whole section from that joint right there by the grating and that joint, this whole section right here has been replaced. And that little whining you hear, that's the bridge. That's the bridge moving. You'll be able to see it right here. You get a heavy truck coming, you're gonna see these. See it moving?
Oh man, cool.
Yeah. You know, it's loading the bridge and unloading the bridge. You know, some days you're out here, these are just a singing. These are really, you know, screaming.
Why is it important that it has some flex?
It has to move. It'd fall down if it didn't.
All right.
You know, it did. I mean, it needs the flex. It needs the move. It needs that to be happy. Yeah, if something locks up, it'll destroy it. You know what I'm saying? We've seen it before. You know, it's the force that this bridge has. If something locks up, it just, yeah, it's crazy.
Do you have to deal at all with the bridge expanding when it gets hot?
Yes. So I guess an example of that would be our most recent joint replacement. When that was installed, the day that it was bolted into place on the superstructure, there's a little chart that was calculated, and you have to adjust that joint for the temperature of the steel at the time that it was bolted to the superstructure. And that allows for the thermal expansion of the bridge as well.
I used to think of the Mackinac Bridge as a fairly static, unmoving object. I mean, it's a bridge. You don't really want it going anywhere. But turns out that much like in life, you need a little bit of flexibility to keep the whole thing working. And speaking of keeping the whole thing working, I wanted to know more about what that takes.
Maintenance supervisor is just overseeing the jobs, making sure what jobs are priority, and we have a checklist that we go by, you know, every spring, you know, and the maintenance crews come out here and start tackling all the jobs that we need to get done for the summer. Our crews are all internal, everything, but we do, you know, all the bigger jobs we do have out here on the bridge, you know, paying contracts and stuff like that. We do have contractors out here with us also, but mainly it's us. We have about like 22 to 24 guys. This year we have grading, replacement panels. We do have beam repairs, which we have a crew out here constantly doing those along with the grading. And then we have our paint crews out here with the reach hauls that are doing a lot of touch-up work that we create while we're on the maintenance side that will destroy the paint, you know, fixing the bridge, and they come by and they help us out and cover our tracks for us.
So how, as a whole, how often do you have to repaint the bridge? Is it an ongoing thing?
It is an ongoing. We're out here all the time. I mean, Russ doesn't sleep.
Now, alas, the Mackinac Bridge Authority did keep my feet firmly on the ground during this visit. I didn't get to go up into the bridge towers, and I didn't get to go climb around on the cables like they did on Dirty Jobs once upon a time. But I've seen the pictures, I've seen the videos. I know that maintenance workers touch every inch of this bridge during their work, and turns out they develop nerves of steel doing it.
Have you climbed all over the bridge at this point?
I have, because I've only been the maintenance supervisor for like 4 years now. So I've been out here. My main job out here was doing the grading, but all over. We painted the cables, have done everything just like everybody else here. They all have nowhere to go and how to do it. So yeah,
Have you climbed the cables?
yes,
How is that?
that's just like walking on the sidewalk.
Normal Tuesday for
normal.
you?
Yeah, it is. It is. Our guys actually feel, safer going over the side in a harness or going on the cables and stuff than being on the road bed. With all the distracted driving that's going on now and stuff, you're actually safer under the bridge or above, away from the traffic.
Hearing that distracted drivers feel scarier and like more of a risk to maintenance workers compared to climbing all over the bridge, I'll be honest, it frustrated me, because where our attention is while we're driving over the bridge is almost always something that we can control. So, do with that information as you will. On a lighter note though, I did also run into the bridge's electrician in the hallway on this trip, and although I didn't film that interaction, he did tell me that the first day he climbed to the top of the bridge, by the time he got down, the palms of his gloves were all worn down from like death gripping the cables. So, not all heroes wear capes. Now, all things considered, the bridge cables and the towers are easy enough to get to and work on as long as you have the courage to do it. But what I hadn't thought about was how a lot of the work that happens on the bridge happens underneath it.
So speaking of under the bridge, and I can sort of see them, my understanding is there's some kind of catwalks down there.
Not necessarily catwalks. You're standing right over top one of our work platforms right now. So if you can see that cage kind of right down there, that's what our guys work on off of. That's on a trolley system that goes along the bridge.
Cool. Okay, so it's like if you need to work under the bridge, but over there's like a trolley that'll take you over? Huh.
Yep. And then we also have our reach alls, which will take you up in a minute, but they're set up there, but those are movable platforms, so we can get it anywhere in the bridge with those. I mean, everybody come home safe. Everybody out, it's a dangerous job. These guys, rely on each other. We use a buddy system out here. We don't go over the side without somebody else there with us, So, the main goal here is to be here and get the job done safe and efficiently and to go home at night.
And speaking of going home safely, there's a guy whose whole job is to help make sure that happens. His name is Roger, and he's the captain of the safety boat. Whenever there are workers out on the Mackinac Bridge, you'll see Roger cruising around the straits just in case something happens. In many ways, he is the last line of defense against a tragedy.
Well, back in, I think it was 1997, is when a guy that was working on the bridge, his name was Danny Doyle. He was on the south end, and I'm not exactly sure the exact spot because I wasn't here, but unfortunately he fell and he was in the water for, I think, between 5 and 7 minutes. And at that time, they didn't have a boat mandated to be in an area. Unfortunately, we learned our lesson in a hard way that day because he ended up drowning. And so after that, it was very short order that it was like, yeah, from now on, if the guys are over the side or doing anything that poses a possible threat of them falling, even if they got fall suppression gear and harnesses, we want to be out here for them. I'm an Air Force guy. I'm out of the Air Force, so it's quite different being in the water, but I enjoy it.
What I really appreciated about Roger is how seriously he takes his job and how aware he is that it would be easy to get a little lax, especially after several years of doing this.
And a lot of people are boat captains, pleasure boaters, divers, people that are really familiar with the water, and you start getting a little bit less than cautious because you've been around it all your life. And a lot of them, their fatalities or their accidents will happen within 6 feet of the dock. It's really, I like to refresh myself on that because I think it's good to get that in my mind, you know, after 12 seasons, always come back into this thing realizing I can't rescue anybody or help anybody if I become a problem myself. So I try to always double or triple think I don't want to become another victim.
So far as I know, and so far as Roger told me, he has never had to rescue a worker who fell off the Mackinac Bridge. The harnesses and other safety requirements are doing their jobs. But he has pulled other people out of the water, including a diver who might not have made it home without him. And when he isn't rescuing people, well, he's chatting with freighters, watching the water conditions, and, to my personal joy, appreciating the geology of the Straits of Mackinac.
This will kind of give you what the terrain looks like on the bottom. If we get out here in the trench, just about where that white pleasure boat is, it's about 305, 307 feet deep right over there. It's really like an under lake, a river or canyon system.
Hey, Roger.
Yeah, go ahead.
The blue recall's up.
Okay, copy. Thanks for the call, Caleb. And it was pretty cool because you saw all the Great Lakes, and it really did. It looked like Grand Canyon or whatever. I mean, you got all this, and how the glaciers formed everything up here is just pretty amazing, really.
Now, sometimes workers are supposed to be in the water around the Mackinac Bridge. And here, I'm talking about the divers.
We have a dive team that comes in, like it's every 5 years they come in, and they'll go down and they'll dive every pier and inspect all the piers and stuff for us.
So the next one's coming up in 2027. So that also includes a team of engineers who are also certified scuba divers that will dive the pillars and inspect the piers and the substructure and the concrete that you don't see, but that's pretty substantial too.
The divers might come out once every 5 years, but the Mackinac Bridge Authority is inspecting the bridge a lot more frequently than just that.
The FHWA requires that we inspect the bridge, perform a safety inspection once a year. So in July, for a 3-week period, we'll have a team of about 10 engineers that are looking at every inch of this bridge, looking at the grading, the cables, the suspender cables, the superstructure, basically recording the condition of the bridge. So we have 67 inspection reports, and that documents the condition of the bridge for its whole life.
Turns out, a lot of the work that needs to be regularly done is repairing and replacing the grates on the inner lanes. The open grating lets wind pass through the bridge, which makes it a lot more stable, but with literally millions of bridge crossings every year, those grates are also starting to wear down. Each year, they're inspected and given a letter grade from A to E. Then the maintenance team will replace any grate that's a D or lower.
Check it out, the spacing is different on the new ones, which is why the pitch is different when you drive over them.
Wait, what?
You know, it's making 2 tones whenever you drive on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because the spacing's different. You change the frequency.
I don't know why this had never occurred to me, but it hadn't. When you drive on the center lanes of the bridge, your tires repeatedly hit the beams of the grates. Individually, each hit is a little metallic ping. But when you're going 30 miles an hour, your tires hit those beams multiple times per second, and all those pings combine into a sort of whirring, vibrating sound. The pitch of that sound depends on how many times per second your tires collide with those beams. The more hits, the higher the overall pitch. You might see where I'm going with this. The spacing on the new grates is different than the old ones, so your tires hit those beams a different number of times per second. So the new grates generate a different pitch or a different musical note than the old ones, leading to this sort of wee-woo alternating note sound when you drive in the center lane. It's a small thing, but one I found incredibly cool. Now, of course, repairing and replacing these grates does disrupt traffic. There are only 2 lanes going each way on the Mackinac Bridge, and especially in the summer, they can all be pretty well occupied. But if you've ever been stuck in construction traffic on the bridge, do know that they are doing their best.
So we are doing all we can to help traffic flow as much as possible. We're able to predict current year traffic counts based on previous years, and then also we'll watch it in real time, and if traffic gets above a certain threshold, we'll pull all our lane closures in the summer because we've seen there's a certain amount of traffic we can see on an hourly basis that one lane can sustain, but after about 700, 800 cars an hour, we start to see backups with lane closures. So at that point, if we're able to, some of the work we're doing, we can't pull on a moment's notice, but if we can pull it, we'll kick all our crews off the bridge just to allow that traffic to flow. These outside lanes are concrete-filled grading. So just like the grading is on the inside lane, it's also in the outside lane. So it actually provides a great steel reinforcement of the deck in the outside lanes. I guess I could explain what these little holes are. So like talking about inspections,
Yeah.
these would have been part of our deck study, which again happens every 10 years. We kind of do an in-depth inspection of the deck for its current condition, not what was designed for originally. But these are just examples of some cores that we could take of the deck and to measure like the chloride content to see how much road salt's being tracked onto the bridge. Road salt and concrete don't really mix, and another reason why we don't salt the bridge, not just for the steel, but for the concrete deck as well. So
Yeah, so I think about how notoriously bad Michigan's roads are. How often do you ever have to replace this concrete?
all the portions of the concrete deck are original to construction. They are coming to the end of their useful life.
Okay.
But a lot of the work that we do with replacing this is just deck patching. So we'll remove the weathered concrete from out underneath the overlay and replace it with several different products, kind of what's meeting our need at the time.
What parts of the bridge are, original and what parts get replaced? How much did the bridge change?
Not so much. The only thing that the major changes that you see on the bridge right now is the decking, the grading. Everything else you see here is original besides getting a facelift.
So a lot of the bridge is original and frankly is doing very well. Because the Mackinac Bridge is over fresh water, it doesn't have to deal with the salty, erosive conditions on the coast. I mean, even road salt in the winter can't compete with the ocean. But that still doesn't mean this thing can last forever. Sometime in the next decade or so, they're looking at completely replacing the bridge deck. Not just swapping out some grates, but doing a full overhaul to keep this thing going another 70 years. But that'll be complicated. In order to replace the whole bridge deck, it does mean they'll have to shut down the bridge at least for a hot second. And remember, this is the only way to drive directly between Michigan's two peninsulas. Anytime the Mackinac Bridge has to completely close, which these days is almost exclusively due to weather, it is disruptive. I mean, the vast majority of the trucks that carry groceries, gasoline, and other kinds of fuel to the eastern Upper Peninsula, they're coming over the Mackinac Bridge. So whenever they do overhaul the bridge, a lot of different systems are going to need to talk to each other to make sure they can do it without seriously disrupting the lives of tens of thousands of people. Man, that's going to be a big job. Woohoo! Now, that said, this project is still in the very early planning stages, so there's no public plan or timeline yet. But from talking to Matthew, it does sound like they're going to try and do this with as few disruptions as possible, like by only completely shutting down the bridge during the middle of the night. Again though, early stages, so we'll have to see what they come up with. But in the meantime, the Mackinac Bridge is doing great. It's well maintained, it's constantly inspected, and I honestly think it's pretty nice to drive on. The Bridge Authority is great about closing down the bridge when weather conditions aren't safe, and the only vehicles that have ever gone off the Mackinac Bridge were not due to high winds. One was due to reckless driving, and the other was very unfortunately intentional. And despite that, if driving over this 5-mile stretch is just not for you, no sweat, you can still come up to the Upper Peninsula. The Mackinac Bridge Authority does have a service where somebody will come drive your vehicle across the bridge for you. You just need to arrange it in advance. Since moving to the Upper Peninsula, I have driven across the Mackinac Bridge dozens of times. In the summer, at night, and in the dead of winter, and I have enjoyed it every single time. But after making these two videos, I now don't just think about the bridge when I cross. I look for Roger in the straits, I think about Joe and his crew making their repairs, and I think about Matthew and his team coordinating new projects to make this bridge better than ever. Because bridges like this aren't just built and then left to do their thing. They're a constant, ongoing act of public service. And as someone who has benefited immensely from this one, I am very grateful for all of the hardworking people throughout the decades that have kept the mighty Mac going. Thanks for being here, and special thanks to the Michigan Department of Transportation, the Mackinac Bridge Authority, and everyone who supports this series on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee for all coming together to make this project possible. To learn more about supporting the show, you can head over to alexisdahl.com/support. But one way or another, thanks again for being here. I hope you learned something that makes you think about the world just a little differently, and I'll see you soon.